Yo, ladies and gentlemen, this is now my third wither skeleton farm video, and one of the things that comes up in a lot of those videos is the fact that if you want to go a little bit bigger, a little higher in your rates, you have to find a fortress with just the perfect conditions. It has, sometimes 2 crossroads next to each other. Maybe you're looking for a 3 or even a 4, and that can take a long time because as we can see, this one doesn't have one. That's not even a crossroad. There's one, but the other one's far away. The next one's a little far away. That's no good. That's no good. Nope. 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 Nope.
One eternity later.
And no. Actually, this one did have a double crossroad. So there's a crossroad there and a crossroad there. So that could work for a 2 crossroad, but if you really want to boost your rates with only 2 crossroads, you got to break out all the bedrock and bring down your height map. But what if you don't want to do that? What if you just want to use any fortress you find? Well, let's get to it. Okay, so you already know from the title of the video, we are going to be making what we're going to call the whiskey train. And what this is we're going to be putting wither skeletons in minecarts to deliver them to the player. Now, before we get into it, there will be timestamps in the video, so if you want to skip information about how the wither skeletons work, how they spawn, where to get them to spawn, by all means, you can go down there and skip that. But we're going to go through some of the basics. Also down in the video description will be a link to the 3 levels of wither skeleton video, where we're going to be able to look at that much more in depth. I talk about that a lot more in detail. We're just going to cover the quick basics right here. Also down in the video description will be a world download, and I've actually included some schematics this time of the modules. We'll also get into that, but you can also look for that world download down in that video description where you can download a world and mess with it for yourself, take a schematic of the whole thing, take the individual schematics, whatever you want to do, test it out. So if you follow my channel, you guys know that I frequently watch Il Mango and check out his content. And he did a gold farm that was using minecarts for the piglins in order to bring them over to the player. And then that inspired a friend of mine, DaveGuy. Down in the video description will also be a link to his channel where he streams Half-Hearted Hardcore on Twitch. And so he built a very similar design. In fact, a part of the modules is going to be directly from him. He was kind enough to give me from his world a copy of the schematic. So we'll talk about that more when we get there, but go down there and check that out. But the premise of putting the wither skeletons in a minecart is for 2 reasons. One, because if we get them in minecarts, they no longer count towards the mobcap. So all these wither skeletons in the minecarts behind me right here, they do not count towards the mobcap. So these 2 behind me here, they do count towards the mobcap. These guys do not. So even if there were 500 wither skeletons in minecarts, you would still have an open mobcap to be able to spawn more. So the idea is once we get them into a minecart, it doesn't matter how long it takes to get them to the player. As long as they're in that minecart, they don't count towards that mobcap and we can spawn more. The second reason being, like we talked about in the intro, sometimes it's difficult to find a fortress that has those ideal locations. I'm going to talk in a moment of a reminder of why we use crossroads. But, if you want to build a really big farm, sometimes you don't want to have to find, either a place that has 4 crossroads or, you found a double crossroads, but you don't want to break out the bedrock ceiling. Maybe that's against your personal rules or against your server rules, whatever the rules may be there, whatever reason. It's a lot of effort to break out a bedrock ceiling. So there's a bunch of reasons. So the idea was being able to have a design where you can use any fortress you find and still get maximum spawns, so that you can still get up to what we're going to get into with the rates a little bit later. Again, down the video will be timestamps for that, where you can skip to that if you want to skip this part. But let's now talk about how to get those wither skeletons to spawn, just real brief. So here I have turned on the bounding boxes of the fortress. This green box right here that we're flying around, this is the exterior of the fortress. So anywhere inside of here, they can spawn on top of nether bricks. So as long as there's nether bricks, they can spawn on top of it anywhere in this green area. And we're going to use that for our spawn skirts. But inside these blue boxes are where they can spawn on any block. So what we want to do is we want to use something with these structures like this. You can see how big of an area this crossroads has, whereas these hallways are just, tiny little area because they end right at the edges there. Or you have structures like these that have this kind of thing, and even if they have hallways going off each side, they're still not a crossroads because you can see where that box actually ends. It's very small. Now in this case, we do actually have a double crossroads right here. So we could use this crossroad, and then link up something to bypass this hallway being in the middle of the way, and kind of just, we could add on some extra spawning space and just let them get time. Or we could just say, you know what, I want to use every single crossroad in the fortress. Or, you know what, I want to use like another wart room. Or here's a lava room also, where the spawning area is a little bit shorter on the width, but it's a little bit taller because it goes a lot deeper. So you can get extra layers in there. You can see how deep that actually goes. So just a reminder on these crossroads of what actual area you can use. I definitely recommend getting mini HUD and using that. That's down in the link of the mods that I use. It's a very useful massa mod. But since they are 2.5 tall, we actually need to have a spawning space of 3. So inside of a crossroad with the spawning layers at these heights, so you can use this as your reference here. So based on this structure, how far down you need to be, you can spawn one on each of these. So you can have 3 spawning platforms for crossroad, or 4 levels for like a lava room or another wart room. So again, here's kind of an idea of your heights. And if you have mini HUD to check out where these boxes actually are, you could even use a grouping of hallways like this. So if you have a group of hallways that are all touching, like DaveGuy did, you can even use this part of the area of the fortress. So that's enough chit chat for this video. If you want more detail, again, you can look down the video description for the 3 levels of Wither Skeleton Farm, where we talk about it more in detail. But let's go ahead and get into the farm. And here we have the great Wiske train. So you can see all the minecarts that we have coming in and going out through this station. And what they're actually doing is they're traveling to a bunch of different spawning areas that we have. So you can see we did get a double crossroads here, but then we have a single one here. Over here, we actually have another wart room that got used. Here I showed a hallway. This one module by itself not making much of a difference, but if you have a bunch of hallways close by that you want to actually end up using together. And then there's another crossroads right here. So we're going to break this down into pieces. First thing I want to talk about is the actual biome. So I did mention that you can use any biome for this. Now in this example, I did use one where the player is almost completely in a soul sand valley. So if I turn on the despawn sphere around the actual kill chamber here, you can see it goes all the way out here, but most of it is in soul sand valley. But we also have a good chunk of it that is in the basalt deltas. As you can see, it ranges all the way over here, so stuff can still spawn out there, and this has been spawn proof. Now, the actual rules of a soul sand valley still apply. If you don't want to do any of the spawn proofing in your despawn sphere, you're worried about either the time, the effort, the energy, the materials that it takes, whatever. The only way you're going to be able to do this is find a spot where your kill chamber, the spot that you're standing, is all the way within a soul sand valley. So your entire despawn sphere has soul sand valley in it. You can still get good rates with that. So right now I'll put on screen, without any bedrock breaking, without any spawn proofing, if you are in a soul sand valley. So in this case, if you had spawn proofed that basalt delta over there, you're still looking at about 700 skulls per hour. And of course, the bones and coal that comes with it at that about 43k and about 30k for the coal, you're still going to get some decent rates. If you are in that soul sand valley, the nice thing is all you have to worry about this time is your kill chamber. You don't have to worry about finding where the double crossroads is exactly in the center, because you can build this kill chamber anywhere. Because like we said, while these wither skeletons are minecarts, they don't count towards the mobcap. So even if we had these spawning platforms over here and we had the kill chamber, like let's say all that was still soul sand valley, but over here wasn't, you could put the kill chamber like all the way back here to an area where you would still have those spawning platforms inside your despawn sphere, but then bring them over. Now, you also see this little package of striders here. This is only hackable. Hackable? This only hackable if we're going to do the soul sand valley ones that use the striders. Okay, now that I'm creeped out, the striders are only for soul sand valley. I'm not going to get into all the specifics of it, but basically, if you have a group of striders in your area in a soul sand valley, they're going to suppress all the ghast and skeleton spawns to a near negligible rate down in a soul sand valley, and so you're definitely going to be able to increase your spawns of wither skeletons that you're going to get. So you can see here from these numbers that I run on screen, if you have the striders, so you bring up a couple of striders into a pen and then just keep breeding striders until you have like 50 to 70 in there. I hear differing accounts on exactly how many you need, so I did put 70 in here. And you can see you're still getting that almost 1,200 skulls per hour, and of course also an increase in bones and coal as well. But that's still not the rates that you saw in the thumbnails of this video. So if you want to make it to that full 1800, then you definitely need to make sure that you spawn proof the whole area. You don't need a perimeter, you can just spawn proof. But if you get your entire despawn sphere around where your kill chamber is, all spawn proofed off. You could use glass, slabs, pressure plates, buttons, whatever you want. The only thing is torches aren't really going to make much of a difference because you still have like magma cubes and gas that can spawn like level 15. So, you know, what's it matter there? But that's where you're really going to push this up. And you can see this is without breaking out any of the bedrock in the roof. So, you know, we have this area up here, no broken bedrock. You still have the entire bedrock roof above the whole farm. So that's still raising your height map up to this level, but we can still operate at the actual mobcap. So I just wanted to touch on that. You can use any biome you actually want for this. Obviously, if you want to get something started before you go through all the process of spawn proofing, if you can find a Soul Sand Valley one, that is great. But these numbers, this 1,600 skulls per hour, the 70,000 bones, the 50,000 coal, that will be any biome if you go through and do the spawn proofing of it. There's just going to be no way around that. You can see, like, we still got good rates. I mean, 1,200 skulls per hour without spawn proofing is still a lot. So by all means, if that's all you care about, you can save yourself a good, you know, maybe 10 hours of effort doing all the spawn proofing. But you still do need to spawn proof all the nether brick in the region that you don't want spawning on. So that was the first thing to touch on. Second thing I want to touch on is this module here from Dave. Like I said, I know he took inspiration from El Mango's gold farm in building this. And he built this up in his half-hearted hardcore. Again, thanks to Dave for sharing that with us. Saved a lot of effort of going through the trouble of actually creating the stations because we already had a working station. So what we have is we have minecarts getting shot out on each of these 4 lines every 8 game ticks. So it's basically this observer clock right here, turn on this lamp, and that turns on this observer clock. We put it into a 2-tick repeater, and that actually then breaks it down into an 8-game tick. We're doing that 8-game tick because minecarts, when they touch each other, decide that they're going to act really funny, and so sometimes they'll like fly off the rails or get stuck and move in reverse. We don't want that. So we have them coming up. We're not using any curved rails because, again, curved rails end up being really wonky when you have so many of these. All you need is one minecart to screw up. But you can see we have these coming in at this angled rail right here. So all we need to do is just have this block out of the way, put down a rail there. This will angle up, and then we can break that rail, put that solid block back. And then we have those passing over the kill chambers here. We have the wither skeletons falling down onto some honey, so they can't just, like, you know, keep jumping over the minecarts. They get sucked into the minecarts. We have some trapdoors here to just keep them pushed towards the minecart, make sure they don't wander over to this side. And then these just kind of go in a loop to whatever spawning platforms we need to actually pick them up from. So we're going to see some of them drop down, and sometimes they stand there for a couple of seconds until an empty minecart comes along and can actually pick them up. But for the most part, like I said, we're picking them up pretty quick. We don't want to send too many minecarts because then they can interact with each other and break each other. And it's a pain to clean it up because then you have hundreds of minecarts just sitting around with nothing. So we have these going over the spawn chambers. Then they come back. They go back to these top sections here. And up top, we have these angled rails, so going down on each side. There's a activator rail to knock them out of the minecart into this kill chamber here, where we are hitting an armor stand with sweeping edge, looting, you know, mending and breaking all the good stuff. And then the minecarts, even though you can't really see it because it kind of goes so fast, the minecarts go down this track. They hit the lava, they break, they get sucked back up into the hopper and recycled back into the train. Now, technically, if you wanted to, you could skip that step with the lava and just have it going down to the, you know, back to the rail. But then you need to calculate exactly how many minecarts you need. If you ever want to turn off the farm, you have to, like, collect every single minecart. This is just going to be so much easier because all you need to do then is just turn off this lever right here. It's going to stop spitting out minecarts and just recollect all the minecarts. So just keep sweeping at wither skeletons until, you know, we can see all these bottom ones, all the outgoings are empty. And just wait for the incomings to empty as well. And so now we can see we don't have any minecarts that we have to worry about unloading or with momentum or anything. They're all just stacked back up into the chests. Now, as far as item collection goes, DaveGuy said he's not the happiest with this item collection. I'm fine with it. I'm a big proponent to, if it works, it's a valid solution. So that's why sometimes you just need duct tape. But this is not duct tape. This works. So we have hopper minecarts that are getting shot out. They go underneath the 2 spots where the wither skeletons get dropped off for their kills, and then they get broken onto yet another lava system. We pull the rail out of the way. After falling through the powdered snow, they get pushed to the center where they get on this slime block pusher that pushes them over the ice and lines them with this chest. And then the reason I dropped this down is because, again, I wanted this to be modular. So this kill chamber is a module, the spawning platforms are a module, the trains are a module, and then the storage is a module. So, you know, if I had built this up top, I would have had to make sure that I moved some of the rails out of the way. I just wanted this to be nice and modular. So we just have it dropping out of the way. All you need to do is just extend this with some sticky piston and slime blocks to whatever height you want to move it to. Or you could even shoot it through another portal if you want to do your storage in the overworld with water streams. But this is my 3-wide tileable 3x speed shulker loader. So that's going to load up shulkers for us of each of these types into each of these chests. You can see we've run it for a decent amount of time, and we're already getting some nice drops out of it. I didn't put a shulker loader on the wither skeleton skulls. By all means, you could put one on there as well. So this is operating by having a shulker loader only every 3 actual filters, and that way we can save on the number of shulkers that we need, and we can fill up shulkers even faster. The other nice thing is technically when the wither skeletons get knocked out of the minecarts, they go back into the mobcap. But as you can see, once your local difficulty gets high enough, some of them are actually putting on skulls that they pick up in the chamber. So they're taking themselves back out of the mobcap as soon as they get ejected. So we're actually saving a little bit of mob spawning there as well. But I did put some solid blocks above the rail lines here that are returning back. You can see, because then they're actually taking some suffocation damage, and then they're actually coming out. Let's see if I can, you know, kind of see some here. So here we have, they're coming out at 8, 9, 10 health. So we could put in some even more blocks there if we wanted to, like we put in some more yellow concrete. We just got to make sure there's going to be a variation of how much damage they take, because even though they're landing on honey, they're still going to take a little bit of damage. So you want to make sure that you don't have them like dying of suffocation damage right before they get back to the station, because A, you won't get the looting, and B, you won't even get the drops. So I even left the portion they provided me as the cyan terracotta, even though I definitely think it should be a yellow concrete. And that means there's cyan in my video, and cyan gang, you are weirdos. So that's probably better. Yeah, I think that looks great. That looks great. I'm kidding. We don't actually need to do that. The cyan versus birch doesn't need to be that in depth. And then last thing I want to cover here is we did do a little bit different of a spawning platform this time. So because we don't have to worry about, you know, what our space is, and I know a lot of people, they don't actually like messing with the piglins. We actually used iron golems this time. So wither skeletons are also attracted to iron golems. The reason I usually don't use them is because usually you're using one area close together and having them drop down to the player. And that means that you actually have to get them like closer to the center as you can. But here it doesn't matter. It actually helps us out to spread out those drop chambers so that we can have, like over here, we actually have 2 rail lines, the red and the blue, coming by this side, just so that we can make sure that we're keeping up with it. And the other reason is, you know, when you're doing that, when you're trying to get them to the center, the golems take up so much more space than a piglin would. And so here it doesn't matter. We can bring them out to the side. This entire area is not part of that spawning platform that we have for those wither skeletons. So that means we can just, you know, have our entire drop sheet on the side. We use the golems. They're nice and easy because you could just build them on the fly. You don't have to wrangle them. You don't have to name tag them, anything like that. But what we have is a wither skeleton spawning and then tracking over. We have the trapdoors, so they'll fall down. We have just a couple of trapdoors on top as well to make sure they can't get over. So we actually have this so they stop there when they hit. And then we have just a break in, you know, if you're using buttons, the whole thing would be buttons. Here we're using slabs. We just have a break in the slabs so that they don't like walk over here and think that they just don't have a path to get to them and just stop right on the edge, because they'll do that sometimes. So if we had this as a slab, you can see sometimes they're actually going to just stay on the edge. Let's see if I can get one to happen. Yeah, of course I can't actually get one to happen. Okay, never mind. Screw it. But what you'll see is eventually you'll get some wither skeletons just standing there and doing nothing, taking up mobcap, wasting your time. As we discussed, whatever you want to use on these spawning skirts, these are nether bricks because they're not inside of a main structure. So you can see that blue line is actually ending right over here. So this is not any of the blue, but it is in the green. So that is still part of the pack spawning. So we have that spawning skirt, whatever you want, is buttons, slabs, glass. You might have to make a couple modifications for the glass just to make sure, you know, here they're going to think they can jump on top of the glass and actually do it and kill your golems. So just keep them from doing that. But those pack spawning skirts are definitely going to help your numbers a little bit. Then final thing I want to touch on is I did talk about you can use any structure you want. So we have like hallways. We have actual crossroads here. This was a nether wart room, so you can see the nether room, we actually fit in those 4 platforms So those are entire 4 platforms. And then also, like I said, adding in 1 hallway, probably not worth it. I mean, you can still get 3 spawning platforms into a single hallway. You know, maybe if you just didn't have enough crossroads nearby, or it just so happened that it was going to be outside of the spawn area of your despawn sphere because you did find a soul sand valley, but it actually touches, you know, right on the edge over there, then whatever, you can use these hallways. You can use these hallways to get yourself your actual kill chamber. What I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to go ahead and take a couple of these structures and replace those spawning spaces so we can see that there's actually 1,083 spawning spaces that we can get out of a crossroads with this design. There are 676 blocks in a netherwart room and 285 blocks in a hallway. So all told, this design here in the world download is actually going to have a total of a little over 6,500 spawning spaces in it. But I would say your sweet spot is probably going to be like a little over 5,000 in order to actually reach that mob cap. Any more than that, and you're probably going a little bit overkill. You know, you might see a slight increase in your rates, but you're talking, you know, maybe a couple of % there. So take those calculations to figure out like how many spaces you have available in the sections that you want to use. And of course, final note, make sure that you are swinging at the armor stand with a sweeping 3 sword. So here we have our sword that we're actually going to use. In this case, we put on smite, mending, unbreaking, sweeping edge, and looting. Don't use fire aspect because you're probably going to actually burn the actual armor stand then. Definitely don't want that. Make sure you have your beacon that has your at least regen on it. So we have our regeneration effect so that we can run this infinitely. You can actually see the bot that's running this for me right now is actually starving, but he'll just sit there infinitely as well because the regen will take care of him. You can also add on an attack beacon if you want, but if you are using a carpet bot or carpet commands or tweakeroo or something like that, if you want to do this 11 game tick swing, you're also going to need haste 2 as well. So we have haste 2 so we can do the 11 game tick swing. And the rest is up to you to figure out exactly what paths these actual minecarts need to take. So just remember, if you do have an area or one of the lines that's going to be hitting a lot of the spawning areas. So if I come down here, I can see the red line is actually going to be often filled up by the time it gets over here. And so that's why we also sent the blue line over to make sure that we can pick up those stragglers. And then again, whatever you do, just don't use curved rails because with this many minecarts going over it, whether you're on a server or a single player, you're going to have a bad time. You can see over here, I even screwed up the red line by accidentally flying into it and kind of made those start bunching up, and so they double. But fortunately for us, it's still able to recover because it is on that system of that curved or angled straight rail, not curved rail. If that happens, all you need to do to fix it is just turn off the rail line for just a few seconds. So we'll just give that a few moments here. And then give that a go again. And that should resolve it. If not, it means you have one stuck at the corners from either landing on it or another mob because you didn't actually spawn proof the entire area. That's definitely something you're going to have to check is your spawn proofing. If you're not going to be spawn proofing the entire area in a Soul Sand Valley, your skeletons, your regular skeletons are going to spawn. You're going to make sure they're not going to have access to walk up next to these rails and start getting picked up. I mean, unless you really just want some arrows just randomly mixed in there too, but they can jump up there at a time when instead of getting picked up by a minecart, like you can see here, there's just a steady stream of already in use minecarts, or they'd stop a minecart and then start backing up the whole thing. You definitely don't want that. So make sure you're keeping your rails in a place where they cannot be accessed by other mobs. You can do that either by, putting glass over the thing or just, putting up kind of boundaries around the whole thing, however you want to handle that. In this case, for this example, all I did is I just made sure that everything was spawn proofed. So, glass on top of these so nothing can spawn up there, and then we have nothing to worry about. So I've rattled on enough about that. Definitely thanks to DaveGuy for sharing that idea with me. I'm loving how some of these things just kind of come up. Il Mango definitely is making minecarts a new meta with his gold farm design that he introduced. I'll link that down in the video description as well if you're not sure what I'm talking about. But it's definitely creating a cool new meta because this means you don't have to do any bedrock breaking at all in order to get better rates than a version of a farm with broken bedrock above it. If any of you have ever broken out bedrock above a specific area or just to clear out a tiny little area, if it's anything other than just getting one hole through a ladder, then, oh my God, you'll know how much of a pain that is. So that's going to wrap it up at this video. Again, also a reminder down in the description will be the world download and the schematics that you can grab for yourself. Again, check out El Mango's channel. Check out DaveGuy's Twitch channel. He is a full-time streamer, does a lot of creative stuff in Minecraft. I enjoy watching that and sometimes get some ideas from him myself. So definitely check that out. And also remember, as always, if you're not okay right now, don't worry about it. It is okay not to be okay. Just keep your chin up. You will get through this. It will get better. I promise you. But in the meantime, it's okay not to be okay. Don't stress yourself out further by trying to force a smile or fake it around your family and friends. It is okay not to be okay. So I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.